Hello, everyone. My name is Terry Paddock. I'm delighted to be here to chair a discussion with the creative team of On Hostile Ground about how they've put the piece together and particularly how they are premiering it online in the middle of a pandemic. Major challenges. So I am joined on this discussion by, and maybe each of you can raise your hands while I say your name. I'm joined by the man behind the music and orchestrations, Michael Henry.
Hello.
Wave, Michael. A lyricist, Darren Clark.
Hello.
Hello. Book writer, Juliet Jilks Romero.
Hi.
Hello. And director, Charlie Westenra.
Hello.
Hello. Great. Thank you guys for joining me. Um, so some of the people watching may have already seen some of the videos of On Hostile Ground online, and if not, I hope they're going to take the time to watch them all. But let's rewind because this wasn't how you initially imagined the piece. But even before that, I'm wondering what was the initial inspiration for the piece? How did it come about to dramatize the effects of a home office policy? Seems like a bit of a leap. Where was the idea born? Charlie, can you start us off?
I just know that there are a lot of conversations. It was the Guardian, really. It was the Guardian articles when they started to publish pretty much day by day, like the scandal that was coming out about Windrush. I mean, it just felt a really a shocking part of who we are in this country, and we started to have conversations about what could we do and what the piece was. And I think it initially started the conversation between myself and you, Juliet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We began talking about Windrush in particular, and how we could, address this creatively. And then what really, is like bore out the story was the fact that there was fallout regarding Brexit, and we fortunately began to frame it in a much bigger, almost international way, looking at Europeans who were being affected by Brexit, rough sleepers who were being deported. So it really broadened out into a much larger story.
Hostile environment is a phrase that I'm sure we have all heard a lot of in the past few years, but just for absolute clarity for people who might not have been reading up as much in the news, who can tell me exactly what that means?
So the hostile environment, I think actually the term was actually initiated by Labour some time ago, but it was kind of latched upon by the coalition government, and the term was about famously in a Telegraph interview, I think in 2012, Theresa May said, "We aim to make Britain a hostile environment for illegal immigrants." So the idea behind it was no one's going to want to be illegal and stay here, because we're going to make it so tough for them. So illegal immigrants aren't going to be able to find somewhere to live. They're not able to rent a car, where they're not going to be able to access NHS benefits. And what happened is two things, I think. Well, there's many things that happened, but two significant things happened. People who are legal here started to be classified as illegal, and that's one of the shocking things. So they demand because of the hostile environment policies that were introduced, people who wanted to rent a house who didn't have the right papers, people who didn't have a passport because maybe they haven't been abroad, or people like and it's had a significant effect on the Windrush generation, is that they were being asked to produce like proof of residency for every year that they lived here. So number one, people who were legally here were being classified as illegal and were losing homes and jobs and all of their rights. The other thing that the hostile environment did was it went into civil society. So instead of it saying, okay, the policing of our borders is being done by the Home Office, it was making people in civil society responsible for that job. So specifically, teachers were being asked to collect data and hand that over to the Home Office on the pupils they had and their parents. Doctors were being asked to pass on data about their patients. It made charities who were looking after homeless people, whose job was there to look after rough sleepers, were going on joint raids with immigration officers. So that's a sort of a quick overview of why we all feel that the hostile environment was so damaging to this country.
Okay. So now you have this idea. It is interesting to tackle such a big subject and to do so as a musical. Let me now turn to the men who make the music. Michael, at what point did you get involved, and what did you think about this idea, particularly as a musical?
As a musical, I'm not sure I came with the idea of marrying the idea with the genre, with the platform necessarily. But in terms of chronologically speaking, Charlie, Darren, and Juliet were already together at the table when I came along to Royal Festival Hall Cafe and met them. So I think plans were already kind of well underway. And I believe I was headhunted. I'm not sure. Someone else could probably give you the details on that because I'm not quite sure. I know Charlie and I have a colleague in common who recommended me. Um, and my immediate concern was maybe the project was looking for a specific kind of composer to represent a specific demographic. And I thought that's not kind of what I do, but I'm very interested in the subject, so let me find out more. Apart from which, there's also a fantastic composer already on board, but I won't name any names, Darren. But I thought, I'll give it a go. So, yeah, what really interested me about this is the kind of is the idea of something that's really hard to discuss if you're not politically minded or savvy in terms of bureaucracy and legislation, etc., etc. But to actually humanize all of the ways that so many different kinds of people are affected by this. So what interested me is how many different kind of particular genre or moods or situations can come together to present this greater whole of something that, quite frankly, quite unjust. The subject of immigration obviously needs to be tackled, and there are things that need to be done, or there are discussions needed to happen. But the fallout, the injustice of treating the whole situation in terms of numbers as opposed to people, and the fallout of that is compelling. And I think it can be whatever the art form, it's such a compelling subject. It's a gold mine, basically, of stories to tell.
Absolutely. So sorry, I've got this slightly out of order then, Darren. You got involved then before Michael, but what was it that attracted you, and particularly in telling this story in musical form?
Yeah, so Charlie approached me after, so myself and Juliet had worked on Day of the Living together, and which was another political piece about the Mexican disappearances of IELTS and upper students. I've always been attracted to political work. I don't consider myself a particularly political person. I believe that politics are very, very personal, and when they become personal, they become extremely, as Mike said, very compelling, dramatically. Charlie approached me about working on this, and she approached me about working on it purely as a lyricist, which is not something that I'd done before, but was actually something which was very attractive to me, because actually writing music and lyrics is quite hard. And I thought if I could do one less of those things, that would be quite nice. And also, sort of in terms of particularly in political work, I had found that I was a stronger lyricist in political work than necessarily musically, depending on what the subject was. And this particular subject, I found very compelling, because It's not certainly not even close to being the same league, but I am an immigrant. I came here from New Zealand 15 years ago. So I found that the experience of moving to a new country, not knowing very many people, like assimilating into the environment, even though I was, New Zealand is not hugely different from England, but it's still, it's a trip. And also just going through the stories when Charlie was talking about, Charlie and Juliet were talking about these stories, it's just the injustice of it is just horrific. And I relish the opportunity to try and tell those stories in a way that would make it would make people really feel the stories, as opposed to just sort of reading them in a newspaper and it being quite dry. We really wanted to get across the idea that these were real personal stories. They were happening now, and that they were important to that we feel them. So that's what attracted me to the project. And then I think, yeah, as I said, we met Mike after that, who was Charlie was the one who recommended Mike to both me and Juliet, I think, was.
Yeah, through Max, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I think in terms of putting this team together, if you were telling this story, I think these three writers are the three writers you'd want. I mean, and I feel like, I guess that's the bit of my job that I love, is like connecting people who are going to work. I mean, I'd seen Mike's work, his composition, I loved. I went to see They Drink It in the Congo a couple of times, and he'd been doing all this great MD work, which I knew about. And a friend of mine, Matt Schmoll, was like, this is the person for you. And what I love about Mike's work is it's kind of got that, it's got all these different kind of influences. It's very, it's classical, classical, modern. It's got all these very, very different styles. And you're like, if you're telling a piece which is about all these different voices from lots of different people, I think that's exactly what you want to capture. You want to find a different flavor for these stories. And then Juliet, with her kind of political heart, has sort of love and passion for politics and telling big stories on stage. And then there's Darren, who writes brilliant satirical political lyrics. And I loved Day of the Living. I also love These Trees Are Made of Blood. Like, you go, who else would you get to tell this story? I'm sure people are going to say, well, someone. But I personally can't imagine a more exciting team. And I think actually as well, I think the three of them are very, very different and bring something very unique to the storytelling.
And by the way, Darren, I can relate. I'm American, so I'm an immigrant too. Yeah, it's some things to get used to when you come here, isn't it? I'm curious, Michael and Juliet, we mentioned Windrush a few times there, and this plays a really important part on Hostile Ground. But it is about more than just the Windrush generation. It's about immigrants in general, as Charlie has said. But as you are both of Caribbean descent, I wonder, does tackling this subject feel personal for you in any way? Juliet, we haven't heard from you in a bit.
Right. It does, powerfully so. My parents came here in the 60s, and I'm very interested in, buried stories, inconvenient political truths, and hidden histories. So when my parents came here, they were recruited in the Caribbean. They were, interviewed. And this followed in Powell's tour of the Caribbean to recruit, West Indians to come and work in post-war Britain. And what they found was a society that were unprepared for their arrival, didn't know why they were there, didn't even know that they were British. My parents arrived on British passports. So a lot of this is unknown, and it shouldn't be. This should be in the public domain. So this whole Windrush, scandal is so important. It's such an injustice for people who came here as British citizens. And what really upset me, and I do like to write from a point of passion and sometimes rage, I think that's all good stuff, was that the landing cards of particularly children who had been brought in with their parents, who were migrating here to work legally as British citizens, those were destroyed. So, you know, when the government were telling them that they were illegal and making, you know, insisting that they prove that they were legal citizens, they wouldn't accept school reports, the fact that they had children or that they'd paid tax. What they wanted was the landing records that had been destroyed. So it's personal. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah. And Michael, does it feel personal for you?
Well, I mean, I'm a Londoner born and bred, grammar school boy. You know, my cultural identity is unequivocally British, and just to know that the potential is there, that if just by a few months or maybe a year or so, if I was born if I was slightly older, I might not have been born in this country, but I could have lived exactly the same life. And to know that my sense of identity, which has no equivocation about it, I feel British, to suddenly be bureaucratically stripped from me is actually infuriating. But I mean, that's not specifically what drew me to the project, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that there is an investment, there's an emotional investment that is just undeniable. You know, for it to be put down to bureaucracy as an excuse, you know, just asking friends of mine, you know, why do you think the Windrush generation were targeted? Why are they even included in this policy to stop illegal immigration? You know, why they're citizens? You know, why are they targeted? And to get an answer back even from friends of mine that, oh yeah, it's just it's negligence, it's bureaucracy inefficiency, which I'm sorry, but I hate to say, I'd say there's something more underlying. And to, you know, I hope I'm not being a conspiracy theorist, but it feels undeniably the situation, it's undeniable that there's more to it than that.
Just now that you've said that, going off on a slight tangent, we're recording this in the week that the racism report was released by the government. And for those who follow the news, you will know, and I'm sure you all know, that that the headline that has been taken from that is that there is no systemic racism, and that the UK should be considered a role model for other white majority nations. How do you feel about that? And do you think that makes what you're tackling in this show that much more urgent and topical? Because it feels so to me, but I want to hear from you. Who's speaking? Who's going first? Juliet, was that you saying?
I was just going to say that, you know, we are very much living in what I would describe as a post-truth world, where truth, democracy itself is under attack. And, you know, when you can write a report like that and ignore the evidence put forward by, you know, Black agencies, Black people working within the community, to come up with a headline saying that there is not a problem. To me, this is like living in a twilight zone, and it's untruthful. And I think this is what we're facing at the moment, and this is why I think theatre, which is a mirror of society, is so powerfully important, you know, and we need to be able to vocalize what's going wrong and the fact that we need to speak truth to power. I know that sounds terribly cliched these days because we say it a lot, but I think that actually this is what we need to do, because there are instances. I mean, I've just written a play about criminal justice and the police force, for example, and undoubtedly there was systemic racism within the police force and other institutions. So, you know, I think that if we're going to tackle these subjects, we have to be able to look them head on and not brush them under the carpet.
Okay. Does anyone else want to add to that? Okay.
I just want to say that very quickly. I think my views are quite old-fashioned. I grew up fighting for colour blindness, basically, to not be judged in a certain way and to be judged as an individual. Whereas today it's very, very different. In order to tackle this subject, it's more about colour consciousness than colour blindness. But either way, the fact that you need to consider yourself as a colour in order to get to some kind of equilibrium of truth proves that the subject of racism clearly exists. You know, that is undeniable. Anyone who denies that is in denial. Is that too many denials?
No, there's a lot of denial going around. Very good. So in the so on Hostile Ground, currently what we're seeing is part of this amazing project that you have got going with Roland Derngate. It's being released as 14 separate videos, and already of the videos that have been published, we hear some incredible stories. There are some Windrush stories, but as I say, not exclusively. How many of the startling stories that we hear are true, and whose stories are they, and how were they gathered? Can I start with you, please, Charlie?
I mean, everything that you see is true. I mean, all of the stories. Some have been fictionalized because, you know, I'm sure Juliet will expand on this more. So, for example, there's this amazing monologue about Chagossian woman and about the plight of the Chagos Islanders who were expelled, but the facts, the story, what happened to her, everything is drawn from sources. Some people, we've been really, really explicit. Their stories are out there. We've just recorded Dawn Hope singing a song, Memory, which is about Paulette Wilson, who was one of the first Windrush stories to come out. So yes, everything that you see is from real people's stories or real policies. So for example, Hide and Seek is a nursery rhyme, and the story behind it is all taken from what happened with the hostile environment in schools.
And were there original, did you do original interviews with some of the people, or are they gathered from research that you've done into these stories?
So there's like a whole mixture about where we've gathered the information from. I mean, obviously The Guardian started like a whole series about Windrush. Amelia Gentleman's reporting, and her book, which is called The Windrush Betrayal. I know that Juliet, she'll speak more to it, has interviewed people. I've interviewed people, so some of it is there's like one verbatim piece in there which was taken from an interview that I did. Other is just from different news sources. I think Actual Conversation, which is a piece that was Juliet discovered, is a real phone call that you and Herbert Small recorded, and he published on YouTube. I think that's where we found it. So there's been a variety of different sources, and yeah, we've been talking, and of course that's the thing, is the more we delve, the more people you get to know and the more stories you uncover.
Then let's come back to Michael and Darren, because we do have the songs and the monologues that you are producing as part of this series. So you have this incredible source material and a huge variety there. You know, Charlie saying you've got a verbatim piece versus Darren, you're creating lyrics. So tell us a little bit about the working process, Michael, between you and Darren.
I think
and when you get the material, what do you do?
Yeah, well, funny enough, I think this might be the wrong way around again, because
oh right, getting that shoot,
which is fine.
Man.
We talked about it early on, and for me, I found that I prefer to bounce off the lyrics. So I usually allow Darren to get his hands on the material first and turn it into the wonderful stuff that he does. And it's so much within that, the crafting of the lyrics, that it's easy for me to come up with stuff based on that. But sorry, Charlie, what did you?
So I was just going to dive in. It's like, before we even get there, I think what's quite important, what's quite interesting, is that there is so much material, as you've just said, Terry, that what we do is we do a little, like, you know, we put all of the material into different topics. lyrics. And we've got to think about curating these stories and about how they're going to work against each other. So actually, that does start off with a discussion of, okay, we've got this story, this story, this story, this story, and this story. So before Darren even gets to start writing the lyrics, there's a big discussion about, you know, what are the pieces that, what are the stories that we feel need to be told. And I think you sort of there, that's where you dive in with your musical ideas there, Mike, in terms of like curating that.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly how we did it. Was so Charlie and Juliet would collect a huge amount of research, and then we'd all meet up on I think when COVID was happening, we would do it on Zoom, and present us with these with you know a huge variety of things, and then we'd go through it all, and just I don't know how it was for everyone else, but for me it felt quite instinctual, like certain things just sort of jumped out at you as being particularly well suited to a dramatic moment, or you know a lyrical conversion, or you know verbatim work, or and maybe for Mike that something might jump out like as a sort of potential musical idea. But as we would go through those meetings, as we would talk, I'd be sort of making notes, just and like writing down phrases, tapping out little phrases, and then I'd share them with the guys as we were going through, and they'd say, like, well, that sounds like an interesting perspective, because a lot of it was about what's the perspective going to be on this particular story. Is it going to be from the point of view of the Home Office? Is it going to be from the point of view of someone who's been directly affected by the hostile environment? And sort of we'd kind of make those decisions together, really. And then based on the perspective we were going with, I'd go away and sit in my car and write a lyric. And reading through all of the research and everything, and then I'd pop that off to Michael, and he would come back with something extraordinary.
Why would you write lyrics?
I don't know. I was just like I happened to, because it was during lockdown and I was bored of being in my studio, so I just drove to the local park in my car, and I sat there, and I made the seat go backward as far as I could. I turned on the radio, and that's how I did it.
I think the sense of balance as well. I think as well as all of that, I think from my input, I like the idea of having some balance to work with. So if we had something that was a scene that involves satire, it would be really nice to look for a monologue, an introspective kind of solo aria or something to go alongside it. So we had, if we were doing a bulk of 5 or 6 in one go, it'd be good to get some balance in those different perspectives kind of thing at the same time.
I remember those conversations, Mike. Mike would say something like, oh, I'd want an aria, a single female voice aria, and like a more like multi-voice. And then we talk about, so I think like, then we talk about the different stories, and they find homes for each other, or those stories might connect.
And just to say that, you know, and lockdowns really kind of made it quite difficult. I mean, obviously we've all been forced online, but it's been really helpful that Charlie's got very strong dramaturgical skills here. So she's really been ringmaster, because, you know, I mean, I remember after lockdown we got together online. How are we going to do this? You know, are we going to be able to present anything for Beam? So as well as casting everything, she's kind of like had that overall eye to make sure that we're trying to stick within the terms of what we can produce, and which has become these like anthology video stories with music, which are really powerful. But that's been really cool. You need a ringmaster, you know, when when you've got so much research and we're in different parts of the country, you know, trying to feed into one particular story.
Yeah. Well, she's a good ringmaster. Now we've mentioned Beam a couple of times, and how you're working in lockdown. Of course, this wasn't meant to happen this way exactly, was it? On Hostile Ground was originally due to feature at Beam in March 2020. Just for those who might not know what Beam is, Darren or Charlie, can you tell us what is Beam? Darren, tell us what Beam
Yeah.
is.
About Beam.
Oh, who are you pointing
I
at?
do know. I know about Beam. Yeah. So Beam is a new musical theatre festival, which was started in 2016 by Mercury Musical Developments and Musical Theatre Network, as a way of getting sort of kickstarting the new musical theatre scene in the UK. It basically involved an application process of the representatives from MMD and MTN going around the country and people pitching. Anyone could pitch their idea for a new musical, and you had 10 minutes to do it. And you could do it. You could present a song, or you could speak, or you could just talk about an idea. And from that selection, I think the year that we applied, there were about 330 or 40 applications, and there were, I think, about 35 musicals that were chosen from those. And from those, there were, I think, 8 that were going to be sort of 25-minute, more substantial pitches, which you would go to this festival, and if you were selected, and you would present a certain amount of your work, and it would all be funded by MMD and MTN through the Arts Council. And so you'd have the opportunity to pitch your project to producers, directors, industry creatives, and from that, the idea is that hopefully some people will pick up some of the work of new creatives that is currently being developed in the UK. So it's a wonderful initiative.
Indeed. And what did you intend to present at that Beam last year with this piece?
Remember.
You don't remember. That's fine.
I think we had 2 songs or 3 songs.
And I think we were gonna do 5
as well.
in total, weren't we?
Yeah.
We're gonna write a couple more.
Okay.
It was quite wild because I was still working on the whip. I think the Wicker Husband was about to open, and Mike was busy. It was just, I just remember that the run up to Beam was being really full on, and then we went into lockdown, and we all had to stop, which was really weird in itself.
So it was scheduled like 2 weeks after everything stopped. And that's a week after lockdown, if I remember rightly. So we were like, go, go, go. I remember Mike had just been up to Northampton to rehearse the kids, and then bang, they were like, we're really sorry. I mean, it was devastating for them and for all those people who wanted to get together and the new musical theatre community. And then Beam were amazing, and they said, look, use our money and go and create, do anything you want to do to further your piece. And so we said, all right, let's start making these little videos of the monologues and songs.
Brilliant. Well, and I'll just note that month, poor Charlie and Darren, because in addition to having Beam cancelled, your new musical, The Wicker Husband, yes? The Wicker Husband opened and closed on the same night. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to rub it in. Okay, yeah, that happened. Yeah, that happened. That was bad.
It happened. It's like, there's a thing. We're currently, yeah, it was quite a thing. It was quite a thing, wasn't it, Charlie? I don't think it really sunk in for a little while.
Not for a long time. And I think also, I mean, this isn't the place, but it's just that community that's at the Watermill. And it was like, I felt so happy. And you're in this idyllic, wonderful place, and you're creating something, and then, wow, this happened. Yeah. And I think we probably, well, certainly, I can only speak for myself, don't think I was quite aware of everything that was happening out, and it was
Yeah.
big culture shock, like leaving this lovely little community and going back and not being able to see your friends. Yeah, it was sad.
Yeah,
Really
it was
sad.
like being in a little bubble. I had no idea that anything was even going to affect us up until opening night, when suddenly, like, there was this talk of, well, it's not gonna, it might not go on anymore. And I was like, it was quite sudden.
Did the I think at 5:30 said no theatres.
Yeah.
And I think we had our press night at 7:30, and yeah, it was one night only.
One night only, one very special night.
It was
One very special. It is shocking to remember that, and so shocking still to think we're still here more than a year later. But back to Beam and On Hostile Ground. So that must have been something very cheering then, to know, coming through all that shock that we all experienced when everything was closing, to have this project to reimagine in a different way. And I guess also, it's a different challenge, isn't it, to put it on in this way? So how challenging was that, to change gears and to reimagine the piece as a series of online vignettes? I'm going to start with the director, Charlie. How difficult was that? How challenging? How exciting? What was good about it?
I mean, to me, I don't know, it's difficult, it's different for everyone, but it was this thing that lifted my spirits. It was like, I think, we're working, and then bang, nothing. And then I think it was about 3 weeks later, they said, take the money, do what. I can't remember whose idea it was to make films. I think it was Darren's idea.
I feel like it was yours, Charlie. I feel like it was yours.
Somebody take credit.
Yeah. Mike.
It was Michael's idea.
It was Michael.
And I think how difficult was it? There was certainly musically, I know it was very difficult for Mike, because you're not in a room and you've got 7 people singing and everyone has to sing to the same rhythm. But he just did these incredible, like, vocal line learning, like these Dropbox folders that everyone went and learned them. But in terms of that was one of the challenges, is like, how do you get people to sing together when everyone's scattered around the place? But in terms of what was joyful about it, is suddenly this work could be seen, but also we got to work with other actors. And you've got to remember that when this first happened, everyone was very like, are we going to be working again? When are we going to be working again? And it felt something really hopeful that we could go, there's a little bit of money, but you can just have a project to do. It will take you a couple of days to film. Everyone films it at home on their phones, and and it sort of grew and grew and grew. And then we went and we got this Arts Council money as well, and we went, let's keep Mike and Darren were like, let's keep writing, and it gave us the opportunity to bring in more actors as well.
Yeah. And so how many performers in total are taking part from the beginning to the end of the series?
For this iteration, I think there are about 32.
Amazing. And Mike, you had not just the challenges that Charlie is talking about, but you actually also appear in several of the videos. Tell us.
Purely for convenience, Terry. Honestly, it's just if there's a gap, I fill it. That's all. So, but I think I've always been a bit eclectic in that kind of way, and given the option, if it was casting for a live performance, I don't think I'd put myself forward, possibly for the jazz recorder bit, but not necessarily for the other bits. But I really enjoyed. I've always created my own demos, my own songs from at home, in the home studio. So jack of all trades kind of thing. So I thought, in terms of this kind of virtual recording scenario, if anything was ever needed that I could just turn my hand to a little, it was just very useful to be able to, well, help the budget first of all. Secondly, I've only got myself to blame if I do it really badly. And thirdly, it's just a quick way of getting the material out there. So yeah, in fact, thank you very much for noticing. It was just like, it's like a convenient.
He's a natural performer. That's what I like. I've said it to Mike again and again. I said, you need to, you know, it's just, he's a natural performer. He's so vivid when he's on screen. So, you know, I feel like
Absolutely, yeah.
I'll be twisting
Thank
his
you.
arms and be in a few more music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fair to say. I mean, the reason why I'm an MD now is it's natural progression from my vocation was always as a composer to write music, but it's actually the like decades of stagecraft in bands and stuff like that, that the practical experience that's really driven kind of success, practical success in the work that I've done over the years. So yeah, I don't crave an audience, but if it can help the process, then all the better.
Well, in addition to your cameo appearances there, Mike, you have assembled some many astonishing performances in the videos, and especially as you say that these actors are doing this at home. They're not in the room with you, but I wonder for you as creatives, if there are any kind of standout moments from the work that you've created so far.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of standout moments. I think some haven't quite been released yet, so I don't want to give any spoilers away. But there's some lovely duos, trios, solos, a couple of stunning solos. My standout moment for me, watching all of the stuff and seeing, I mean, the credit for me has to really go to Bartek, who did the video side of it, and Charlie collectively, because for me it's Generation Windrush, which I don't think that's quite released yet. It will be, but just seeing, can I say, yes I can say, just seeing the number of screens appear and the number of people appear over time during this song, it just works so well to just give across this kind of optimism, this fresh youthful kind of world is my oyster kind of thing, and just exponentially see, you know, like the camera panning out from the earth kind of thing, you know. And that's lovely. That's a standout moment for me, as well as lots of solo performances. Everyone, thank you everyone for being involved.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot, and there's a lot for me as well. Like, you know, I watched the videos all the way through the other night, and just got so much. Just felt very proud to have been involved in it all, and was very proud of every, you know, all of the performers and all of the creatives involved in it. Like Mike, I loved, you know, so many parts of it. So many extraordinary performances. For me, like, just something that sort of just jumped out as being particularly entertaining, horrifically entertaining, is the Home Office. Is the way that Bartek and Charlie have managed to, you know, the way they edited that together. It's just it's very clever. It's very funny. It's very satirical. The performances of the actors are fantastic. You know, the comic timing of them is brilliant, and Mike's music comes across really like, you know, it's just a very, you know, it's a wonderful satire. Just watching that video, I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
And it's one story, you know, it's a beautiful little story that packs a punch and it makes you think through humor. I love the performances.
I think the quintet. Oh, sorry, Charlie.
No.
I think the quintet of performers, the Home Office choir, as it were. I think they're going to really love seeing themselves next to each other.
Yeah.
All of those at-home individual performances, and you see this collective just relishing every word they're singing at the end. There is just together is wonderful.
I feel like I've got so many favorite moments, and it changes day to day. But the two is Jackie Dubois doing Juliet's beautiful monologue. It's just so heartbreaking just to think about those stories. And also, I mean, when you see Tyrone Huntley's performance against himself, that's another wonderful moment where he plays two twins, and their story is you listen to what happened to them and you're like, I can't believe this is happening in this country, and we pride ourselves on our democracy. So yeah, those today are the two moments I love the most.
I love
these are all
the London boys that you know, that Daryl and Darren, because you know, this is a complex story which really needs to be told. And I think it was filmed beautifully. I think it was performed beautifully, and it has bite. It's, yeah, it really, that I know that will bend the minds of an audience. That's what you want to do.
And so Tyrone, as we mentioned, he's playing brothers, but you also have two actual brothers in the ensemble, right?
Yeah, I know, I was torn because then I want to just talk about their performance. I mean, Aaron and Nari Blair Manga, we were so lucky to have them, and they're these gorgeous, both of them, they're so different, but they both like completely act with their heart. And actually what's rather lovely is that there's a really shocking story called The Fighter, which is which Aaron plays, and he's playing a boxer. You'll have to watch it to see the full story about why. But he's being reffed by his own brother, who's Nari, and they've just got wonderful chemistry, and their performances just leap off the screen. So I can't wait for people to see that film.
That's wonderful. Have you had any feedback so far from any immigrants who have been affected by Home Office policy? Charlie, you're nodding.
Yeah, loads. And, you know, I think that people have been responding on the hostile, like on our Twitter feed. I think probably the most significant has been Ewan Herbert Small, who you will have seen is played by Mike in actual conversation. And he said that he was glad that the humor came out because it's a verbatim piece. This is the piece that Juliet found, Darren edited, Mike composed and performed. So it's a really special one. It was like all of us working. And what he said about it was, I loved how you captured like the insanity of the immigration laws and all of those hoops that they're having to jump through. And it's a beautiful, again, it's another great narrative piece because you see how this man knows more about his situation than the person who's telling him about his situation. Like it's ludicrous, it's sort of Kafkaesque, and he's been great. And what happened a couple of weeks ago was we had a Q&A, and Mike interviewed him on this Q&A, and it was great to hear his perspective, but it was also really shocking to hear that all these years later, this is still going on for him. From like 2017, he still doesn't have leave to remain in this country. And his children, or one of his children, doesn't have British citizenship. And it's a crime, you know, it's criminal.
Okay. Now, what we are missing, of course, from seeing these videos is more of a sense of the book overall. So Juliet, let's flip back to you. Once we get through COVID and we can look forward to the full-fledged version, what can we expect for the book, and where do you go from here in putting it together?
Well, that is the next stage, really, and it's about, you know, absorbing the voices, the research, the stories, but really giving them a deep dramatic arc. You know, we have, as I said, anthologies at the moment, which, you know, but what we need to introduce is real drama. And we've got it in spades, basically, because, you know, what's been happening to people and their real lives. I mean, we talk about Ewan Herbert Small. I mean, you know, losing your job, not being able to pay, you know, rent, or get, you know, healthcare. This is, you know, these are the kind of like crises that our characters are facing. So, you know, we need to be able to, or rather, I need to be able to put these together into a coherent, dramatic structure. And I've not been able to do that at the moment. You know, we're looking for producers who want to really take this forward, but I relish, actually, because that's what I do as a writer. It's my job to find the drama, find powerful story, which will keep an audience on the edge of its seat.
I am on the edge of the seat wondering when I'm going to be able to see this. So you're looking for a producer, but director Charlie, have you got any ideas? What, obviously once Juliet finishes the book, when it might actually be produced, or where?
Loads of ideas, Terry. Loads of brilliant venues in mind, but nothing concrete yet. But we promise that you will be the first person that we tell.
Okay, well, thank you very much. But in the meantime, we can all enjoy these really incredible videos. So what do you want audiences to take away from, I mean, obviously, I'm going to say I want them to watch every single video, not just dip in and out. I mean, every one is a standalone piece, so they can clearly enjoy them as a standalone video, but they're very, very powerful if you watch the whole series. So, but what do you guys want audiences to take away from these videos? Darren, we haven't heard from you in a while, so let's hear from you first.
Yeah. What do I want people to take away? I would like them to take away the thoughts that, well, the feelings that the people who've been affected by the hostile environment must be feeling. I want them to sort of understand and empathize with a situation that is none of their fault, and to recognize that this government has done something truly, truly awful that they are trying to weasel out of accountability for. Even now with this race report, which is absolutely horrific in its blatant ignorance of systemic racism. But I'd also like them to see the horror and to see the absurdity and to go like, this is not the Britain that I want to live in. This is not the England I want to live in. That's what I'd like to take.
Very good. Would anyone else like to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar, but not nearly as well worded. But I think it's, for me, it's for the recipient, for something that at first felt like a remote statistic, to suddenly become like a skin that the recipient actually has to wear for a while and feel like what it's like to be that person, and to, as Darren says, empathize. And from there, I think the natural progression is to want to take part in a discussion about this kind of thing, and to want to question what can be done. Is there a solution? Is this the way? Do I endorse the way things are right now? Now that I feel closer to the actual situation.
Very good.
I'd just like to add, yes, I agree with everything that's been said. I think we need to ask what we want from our governments, and what we want from society, and what's our direction of travel. I mean, we look across the pond, we see what's happening in the United States, the way children of migrants are being treated on the Mexican border. We've witnessed the power of extremism. And I think that I would like to think that if people came to see On Hostile Ground, they would then take up that sense of urgency, agency, and that torch to question what is it we want from our government, what do we want from society, because I think that's the only way that we can build better, as it were.
That's lovely. Urgency and agency. You could be the lyricist too, I think. What do you think, Darren?
Do it.
And
take it.
I certainly had a go with one song on Day of the Living, so I've been thinking about this.
and Charlie, last word to the director on what do you want audiences to take away?
Everything. I mean, outrage, everything that these three people have said, but also I guess I also want everyone to sort of see what talent we have in British new musical theatre. I mean, we do it so well, and we've got extraordinary writers on board and these actors who created it from their living rooms during a really hard time, and I'm really proud of that.
Well, guys, this has been such a pleasure, and apologies for a few technical hitches. You're lucky though you didn't have to see my dog bound in. You might have heard her in the background, but at least we didn't have to contend with that. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. It's fantastic.
Nice to finally meet you.
Oh.
I've read a lot of your features, but I've never met you before. So it's nice.
Well, we have to meet in person. I can't wait until we can all be in a room together. That would be really good. So yes, please promise me when you do stage it that you'll ask me back to do a proper post-show Q&A where we all sit on chairs on a stage and have a really good chat. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Awesome. But in the meantime, please, everyone, be sure to watch all of the On Hostile Ground videos. And thank you so much to Michael and Charlie and Darren and Juliet. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.